Hello everyone, and thank you for coming to another Thoughters Debate Night video. We have some old faces here, our friend Stern, and we have a new face, Spook. And hopefully tonight VM will not go into his usual trolling mode and ruin the debate night. So that being said, we're going to jump right into our questions. And the first question is, should the United States preemptively take action against other nations economically, socially, and militarily to secure its interests? So what do you guys think about that?
That's
Well,
a dumb and vague question.
well, the question of should it is a moral question, and I don't believe in morality.
Okay.
Oof.
So there are certain assumptions that have to be
Edgy.
made about the question in order to answer it. So make your moral assumptions first, and then answer the question.
Okay.
Like,
Firstly, the United States is an ANCAP utopia. Okay, that's
exactly, brother.
well, there we go. And it hires private military to colonize like uncolonized territory and establish McDonald's there and
This is
spread the
powerful.
Oh, I should have never shown you the anarcho-capitalist movie.
Oh my god, that shit is great.
It is pretty amazing. But
No, but if we're asking if materially, from like an objective standpoint, it's a good idea, I'd say no. In like entirely divorced from morality, no. It never ends well. And if we look at the history of us doing it since like the Cold War era, it's never ended well for us. It's only resulted in problems.
okay, and what do you think
And
about
that
this,
is why
Stern?
I believe that the United States should, because it's a bad thing.
That accelerationism is powerful. I'm sorry, I changed my view.
Okay, so what about situations where it's actively in the United States' interest, as opposed to where we've kind of fought these proxy wars and we kind of went into World War II when it
Well, the
wasn't in
thing
our
is that
best interest?
it's almost always in our interest in the short term. Uh, but it I don't know. I'd say even in situations where we can firmly say like, oh, this is in our interest, it's rarely ever worth it for the myriad potential problems it can cause,
Okay,
and almost always does cause.
and when you say in the short term it was good for us, would you say like in World War One, World War II, Vietnam, then the
Well,
worst?
Vietnam wasn't good for us in the long or short term.
Right, but so what kind of short-term benefits would you say that we get from these wars?
Well, for World War II, right afterwards, we had a pretty large economic. We prospered quite a bit as a result of all of the people coming home and whatnot. Also, we. That's about it, really. I mean, when you think about it, what did we gain other than protecting global capital?
We gained the Marshall Plan, basically enslaving all of Western Europe under United States hegemony.
Yeah, and Japan.
Now
Yeah.
that too.
Well, I think basically the United States gained a lot if it had just, well, maybe it was put in the position to make those deals because of its involvement in the war, but if they had stayed outside of the war, I think their currency still would have reigned supreme, and they could have still had those agreements with those European countries. What do you guys think?
Because, like, here's the thing: stayed out of the war, that would have necessitated no lend leasing, no sending pilots over to the UK during the late 30s, early 40s, expeditionary troops, nothing like that. It would have necessitated an entirely different course of history. Franklin Delano Roosevelt ever being president.
Hmm. Okay, so
Like if Huey Long were president,
Every man a king, brother.
yeah,
right.
even though he's kind of an autistic fella.
Okay.
He did a lot of good as far as industrializing the South.
So then
It was just Louisiana though.
can
But
we
yeah, he
safely
was
say
pretty good.
then can we safely say then that there are situations where the United States benefited long term when it entered into a war?
I'd say in the Japan case to an extent, and that's about the only one I could really look
I
at
just thought
that
of
way.
something. What if what was his name? Matthew Perry? What was his name?
William
William
Dudley
Dudley.
Pelly?
The
William Dudley Kelly.
I don't know. The dude.
I
That
also
opened-
base my view of history on Hearts of Iron.
The guy that brought no. The guy that brought the shit to Japan in 1860.
Oh,
Perry. Yeah, Commodore Perry.
Yeah, like if I think you can argue he's just a big meme, and if he didn't exist, like maybe the Japanese would have been a pain in the ass.
I don't think so. I think they still would have been a pain in the ass.
I mean, I don't know. Like, would the Europeans, like, without like American involvement, would the Japanese have a modernized?
They were already modern.
They were, yeah. We were like opening trade with them, helped them economically, but I don't think it was as big of a.
I'm pretty sure the
thing for
British
the
and the French
modernizing.
were also like, yeah, they're messing around Japan doing. I don't think it would have made a difference, to be honest.
Okay.
Completely like a relevant question, but like, I think it's a good, it's a good meme because if you think about it, Perry was just, he was just a traitor.
Yeah. He was the ultimate ANCAP. He just went in there and with his guns and made them trade.
He sold them all. He sold them guns.
So would you say that the United States should preemptively take action against other nations if the economic, social, and military benefits can be accurately predicted into the future?
No.
Okay, so not even then?
Nope.
And is it because you don't see a common thread, as in predictive capability in entering these wars? It was kind of like luck of the draw?
Yeah, mostly. I mean, when you consider that most of our involvements in all of those things did not end up well, Japan is like the one in a million thing that did kind of work out for us in the end. I just don't think it's worth it. And even if we could accurately somehow predict that it would be good, I still just think that from strictly a world meddling in shit standpoint, I just don't think it's a good thing to do.
Okay, so basically focus on yourself. A country should be an isolationist to an extent.
Yeah, not like 100% necessarily, but we should definitely focus on our own shit.
Okay. All right, well, I think that we thoroughly answered that question. Let's go on to number 2. Is television a tool of propaganda more so than entertainment?
Entertainment is propaganda.
Yeah, I would say no because of that.
Okay, so you basically say that the two aren't mutually exclusive?
No, I think that they are literally the same. Like everything.
They really are.
Everything is created from a specific perspective, and everything is presented to you from that perspective to get you to take it. State propaganda is no different from an individual's painting or a person performing on the side of the street a song. It's all the same. It's just the scale it's different.
Right, I see what you're saying there as far as like ideologies and perspectives from the artists to the audience. But I guess in this question, what I'll be asking is television a tool of political propaganda from, say, the rulers or the elite of the society more so than entertainment?
I would say yes and no. I don't know if propaganda is the right word for it, and I don't think that television is the main source of said propaganda. But I don't know. It's more complicated than just yes or no, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you know what I remember? I remember from a YouTube video that I watched a while back from this one individual. I don't remember his name, but he had made reference to the fact that India had made it a requirement for each household to have a television. Now, I don't know if you can construe that in the form of they wanted it for propaganda purposes or whether or not they want it so that they had a way to alert citizens to certain emergencies, or it was just a good way to spread advertisement for companies. But it was something that the government wanted each household to have, from what I understood from that video. So that being said, would that kind of change anyone's minds or reinforce their ideas of television's true purpose in society?
I don't know.
Wait, what was the question?
The question was, is television a tool of political propaganda more so than entertainment?
Wait, did you change the question?
No.
Well, I inserted political propaganda because propaganda could an entertainment that could involve the artist's perceptions being forced upon the audience, or at least conveyed to the audience in a positive light.
Everything is political.
Yeah, everything is political propaganda.
Yeah, you
If
could
you
say
do
that.
a painting, I mean, even if not by intention, if you do a painting, here's an argument. If you do a painting, it's going to be in some style of art, and usually styles of art are an extension of philosophy and politics by default.
Right. But in this case, think of it from the elite's perspective. If they would be using the television for their propaganda more so than the television being an instrument of entertainment slash propaganda on the behalf of the artists.
I would say that they
The artist
definitely
is the
bend
elite.
the entertainment to whatever identity message they want to send, I guess.
Yeah, and I think we've been seeing that recently with our media.
I think it's been around for a very long time. I think it's been around since humans started painting on cave walls, but it's just much more advanced now.
So what would you guys say?
Red.
Yeah, go ahead, Stern.
Red. Look, cave painting. Red. Blood. Is.
Violence, good.
Good.
Look, cave painting red, comrade.
So,
Primitive.
in lieu of that question,
Wait,
what
the
would you
color
guys
red.
say? What would you guys say
Guys,
about?
guys.
Yeah, what is
Guys, the color red is technology. We can't allow that. Our primitivist utopia.
it? Okay.
Yeah, we can only paint with our shit.
So,
No, that's technology,
In lieu
because
of
we're using
that
a tool.
statement, in lieu of this question, what would you say as a commentary on what's been happening in our media recently? Because it seems to be it's been more pressured than usual. At least, with the Marvel movies, with Ghostbusters, with a lot of these new slave movies
what I would
promoting
say-
interracial marriages. Not to say that
What-
that's inherently a bad thing, but it's something that has been happening.
What I would say is that the intellectual vanguard, as it were, of the sort of college social democrat movement has, when they saw that populism and this sort of Trumpian movement was catching on so much overseas, and I mean, I'm not a Trump supporter at all, but this is just going off of what I have witnessed. When they saw these movements catching on, they very much jumped the gun on the end game of the Long March. They pulled the trigger and decided, okay, guys, cultural takeover now. And they started pushing all of these things long before the Overton window was far enough left. And what it's resulted in now is that they're pushing the Overton window further and further right with their own stupidity, which is unfortunate because either way it gets pushed too far ends up being bad.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Okay.
Say that your opinion falls within the Overton window.
Okay, so
Powerful.
with that, we're going to go to number 3.
Number 3.
Should we care
Number
about?
15.
Okay, great. Should we care about the persecution of minorities if their persecution benefits the majority? Say, for example, the minority is as such. X is less than 5%.
Like, firstly, I just want to say this, Bravos. Every debate night, you're always like, guys, no racism, and then you inject, 5, questions that are,
Wait, this doesn't
racist.
even involve race. It just means, a minority.
Any
group in
form of
general.
minority.
Yeah,
Well, you
and-
see, the problem with how you word it is that you started out with "should we care?" Should we care about anything?
Well, that's another topic, but specifically to minorities, should we care if their oppression benefits the majority?
Well, there are many ways of looking at that. You could look at it through Bakunin's lens and say, well, freedom. Fuck, what was it? There's no real freedom until everyone has it. Like that kind of
Privilege expanded until everybody has it.
Yeah, freedom
Right.
is merely privilege extended unless everyone has it. You could look at it through that lens, in which case, yeah, we should care. But the question is that lens realistic? I don't know. Honestly,
Even
have
if
no
I look
idea.
at it through that lens, I
Okay,
say
okay.
no.
Here's mine.
I am a...
It depends. I mean, it depends how much money the minority has. Just
If you expel them from your kingdom, how many ducats will you get?
Well, yeah, it also depends. Yeah, it also depends. Like, I guess. Okay, let's say ideally we're a republic, right? Right, and let's say your minority is extremely wealthy. And they have a lot of money, right? Well, you
Yeah.
don't want to do legislation against them, right? You want to do legislation for them, so you get.
Get money. Right?
Why not just seize their money and then persecute them?
Why don't you just borrow a
And
loan
you
from
get to
them
persecute
and
them.
then kick them out so they can't come back for that loan? You know, you guys are
Okay,
playing.
wait. Why don't we just like get a gun, just like stick them up, and like give me the 3 digits on the back. I'm gonna go save John Wick.
Exactly.
Yeah, so basically in that situation you'd be persecuting the minority for the benefit of, well, in that case it would be the ruling class or the government. And
What if the
possibly
minority is the
majority.
What if the minority is the ruling class?
What if a very small, oddly specific cabal of people ruled over us? Wouldn't that be weird?
Whoa! You said cabal. Stop with the anti-Semitism.
Wait, listen, we're not.
You can't have
we're not
this on this
talking about any
PC server,
specific-
sir. Okay, go ahead, Brother Howe.
We're not okay. So nothing specific. It's just a small, very specific ethnic.
Okay. We're gonna move on to the next question. 4. What is the best definition of knowledge?
Lamborghini. I'm sorry.
You know what I like more than my Lamborghini? Knowledge.
But no, well, that's kind of a loaded question because there's a difference between intelligence and wisdom, and there's a difference between knowing something and understanding it.
Well, in this case, it would just be a definition of what knowledge is. So, for instance, we have like the JTB, justified true belief, and then we also have things like corresponding truth theory.
I don't pay attention to words and shit because I'm just too much of a Chad for that. But if we look at like the Western understanding of knowledge, it's very much based on labeling and categorization, whereas Eastern philosophy, just as a parallel here, for example, is very much based on introspective understanding. And both of those views of knowledge are entirely legitimate in their own rights, but which I don't know if either is necessarily better or worse than the other.
So what you're talking about is how they would acquire that knowledge.
Not so much acquire as internalize.
Internalize, okay. So it's a good thing that we had Aroka come here. I'm sure you have something to say on this issue. Aroka, what would you say is the best definition of knowledge? So when I say that, I gave examples such as a justified true belief would be considered knowledge, or say, for instance, we have the corresponding theory of truth. What would you say would be your best metric of what knowledge is?
Real knowledge is when you take 5 grams of psilocybin mushrooms and lay in silent darkness.
Okay, there's one. Aroka, is your mic working tonight?
I agree with
Anime
that statement.
Zoroaster, your mic is muted. There you go.
Okay.
Zoroaster. I know that it was muted.
Okay.
So the question is epistemology?
Yeah, technically.
Can you ontologically use a truth claim to finally reveal that the Cartesian demon is above?
Yeah, well, I think that'll give you some more context to answer the question. So, what is your perspective, Aroka?
What doth life?
What doth life in Aroka's world?
Be or
Worldview.
not to be is the question.
What do you think, Aroka? He's thinking about it.
Yeah, kind of.
And I mean, to be honest, it is a question which we aren't asked every day. It is a...
I mean, real enlightened people who understand the basis of, like, true knowledge know that traps aren't gay.
I won't make a comment on that.
I'm gonna go with the Descartes answer and be like, the only real knowledge that I think we can hold as an absolute true belief is deduced a priori. So, I think therefore I am. Any interactions that are gained from our perception are essentially, they're subject to a whole bunch of variation. So you can know things generally, but you cannot claim absolutely.
Right.
That to me is what separates Western and Eastern philosophy on a fundamental level, because Descartes, for example, his "I think, therefore I am" was essentially an attempt to understand his knowledge and perception at the most basic level without any interference. Whereas the Eastern side of philosophy would very much accept the interference as part of reality and would say that, well, I exist within this space is part of me and I am part of it. And so it's very... I don't even know where I'm going with this.
I think
Abraham
those
Maslow would
lines-
have something to say about that, I
wow.
think.
That's a lot of people.
So
Along those
Descartes,
lines, I would
starts with what's called a philosophical ground zero, where it's basically just trying to find, it's like a from scratch epistemological justification.
Well, VM and I were talking about this issue, and I think we both came to the conclusion, like, probably the only thing that we could say with any objectivity is that there's some existence going on. Since you can't say, well, what I am acquiring with my sense perceptions are real, you can't really know that for certain.
Everything we know is based on that which we cannot know. Will you fight or will you die like a dog?
Which Eastern
Seeing
philosophy?
Edgy, but I don't even know what you're trying to say.
It's Mickey Mouse.
I know, I've seen the meme.
Yeah,
Okay.
solid.
So here's the weird meme, right? Is that it's really difficult to completely define existence. Like, I'm still, to this day, I'm still stuttering over what the fuck existence is. Can somebody help me out?
What is existence? Well, I mean,
The question that's been asked since day one.
well,
You ever burn your tongue when you bite into a Hot Pocket? That's existence, friend.
Well, the best that I could feel or think of would be that existence is basically the acknowledgement that you're getting sensation. And because you have sensation, there must be something that exists. Because
To sense.
yeah.
Okay, but like, what is something?
It's interesting. Well, here's something
Yeah,
interesting.
thanks,
Have any of you guys
Heidegger.
ever experienced ego death?
No, I don't think
I
have.
actually have in minor moments. It's pretty scary.
I have all sorts of like really fucking weird mental disabilities, and I might have I probably have schizophrenia because my mother does, and I constantly depersonalize and dissociate and have issues where I just detach from myself. And I can tell you, nothing is more terrifying than like just being lost in your head and not really knowing. It's so hard to explain if you haven't experienced it, but it's like you don't know what real is, and everything becomes incredibly alien on such a fundamental level that you don't really understand anything anymore.
Actually, I could slightly relate to. Is it like the same as like you've been saying a word your entire life, right? And you just
Kind of,
suddenly
yeah.
look at it and you're like, what the fuck? This is really weird.
It's like when you say a word so many times, it just feels weird and you don't really recognize. It's like that, but for all of reality, and it's the most like intensely strange experience.
Yeah.
Imagine it. Have you ever had those moments of ultra ego where you just kind of like look at everything and you're like, I exist, and it's like really apparent in that moment?
Yeah, I've slammed into both ends of that spectrum.
So like, if you've experienced the one I just said, imagine the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that sounds like a harrowing experience.
If you've ever smoked way too much weed, it's kind of like that, but not fun.
No, mine is just with meditation. I can kind of relate it. I know what you're saying. It's, nerd. It is kind of weird.
If you've ever read Sartre, in one of Sartre's books, I forget which one, he describes a man standing on a bus and he has his hand on a chair, and he has this moment where he looks at the chair and sort of recoils in horror because for some reason he just doesn't recognize it and it seems so bizarre and he has no idea what it is, and he has to sit and piece together like, okay, there's a cushion. There's a thing.
That reminds me of this mental. It was this disorder where it's like somebody, when you like point to something, I think it's like through the right eye. It has something to do with like the sides of the brain where when you point it to them, like they could tell you what it is. Like with the characteristics of it, but it's impossible for them to like tell you the word.
People with brain damage have that, where they can understand that an object is blue and that another object is blue, but they can't like really relate how blue one is to the other one.
Yeah.
So that they would be sharing the same color. He wouldn't
No,
understand
it's
that?
more like you just can't draw comparisons. And I what I've experienced as far as depersonalization is pretty similar to that. It's like you can't relate anything to anything else, and nothing makes sense because you have no foundation to compare it to.
Yeah, there's like no second tier of processing capable.
Yeah.
That reminds me about this the discussion I had about coherentism with what's his name yesterday, Gonley. Completely off
Care to
topic.
elaborate?
Godly-ish, you mean?
Gonley-ish, yeah. He was talking about coherentism, and I was asking him what exactly coherentism is, but the premise of it is that knowledge is inherently founded on comparing one thing to another thing, and if you don't have a previous experience, you cannot really like have knowledge or.
Yeah.
Okay, I see what you're saying. All right, well, with that, we're going to go to question number 5. And this question, I understand, is a bit weirdly worded. So, I'm going to kind of try to reword it while I'm saying it. So, do people always require governing? If so, what amount of control needs to be exerted over them?
Well, what do you mean by
Well,
governing?
it's interesting, depending on how you approach this, because obviously I'm an anarchitty, so I don't believe this.
In this question,
By
when
governing,
you're
do we
answering it,
mean like the anarchist definition of governing, such as involuntary
Horizontal.
hierarchy?
well,
Yeah, horizontal
let's just
power
say
structures.
this: when you're answering the question, I'll allow you guys to assume whatever type of government or governing that you want to use, and then also the kind of people that you're talking about. And you can specify for different groups, and then correspondingly what amount of control needs to be exerted over them, if at all.
Okay. So here's what I think. So the ideal amount of governing should be complete totalitarianism, and the
That's
amount of people
powerful.
should be is one. It should be totalitarian control over the individual.
Okay, memes aside.
Okay,
I
but
think
no,
that, here,
I
do you
did
mind if
actually
I
want to say
speak?
something. Oh yeah, you go.
Okay, thank you. I think that any population or group will need some set of rules that they have all agreed to abide by. And of course, you'll need some enforcement mechanic, of course, be it either by like specific people or some kind of democratic punishment. But I think that it is inconceivable to have any group without some kind of governing body of rules.
So if we look at the nature of political power as a whole throughout history, we can see what I would describe as a fairly observable process of dissemination. So we look at, if we go back to Rome, we look at how fairly hierarchical and strict that was, and how it flowed into then the feudal system. And then if we look at the Industrial Revolution, and we look at the power dynamic between a monarch and a serf, and we look at how the Industrial Revolution came in and changed that power dynamic to that of a citizen and a prime minister or a president. And we look at the reasons this happened. The reason this happened is the dissemination of tangible power, whether that is through industry, weaponry, just production, the abilities of the lowest level of society inched closer to the abilities of the people at the top of society. And so I think that we have not reached the final stage of this at all, and we are going to continue reaching further and further stages of this. And so the question for me really is, at what point does governing of anyone become literally impossible?
Okay, so the new question would be, at what point does the governing of anyone become impossible? Well, I think it's when people segmented into different groups just cannot see eye to eye, and them being in the same geographic area results in conflict continuously, and conflict is to such a degree that they cannot live with any sort of cooperation with each other.
So
Well,
you think that
cooperation is not
power?
necessarily the same as government.
You think that government is derived from a power differential between individuals? But since
Yes
men
and
are
no.
born unequal, I don't
think
think
that
that there will ever
hierarchy-
be a case.
I think that hierarchy is born out of power dynamics, but
You can have government without hierarchy.
government. Yeah, you can. You very much can have government as opposed to governing. You can have systems of mutual cooperation without hierarchy or coercion. It's difficult, and I don't think that in our current system of power dynamics it's especially realistic. But I do think that after a certain point, and especially as we continue this historical process of dissemination of tangible power, it will become increasingly more and more possible and likely.
But I don't think it'll approach the absolute end. Like I said, people are born
may or may
unequal,
not.
and just that point means that there will always be even minuscule differentials in power from one
There could
individual
be.
to another.
I can't say for sure whether there will or won't be.
Well, the current postmodernists are doing their absolute best to make sure that that's what happens, but I don't think that it's possible.
Postmodernism doesn't have much to do with that, though. Postmodernism is an art movement.
Well,
It's
no, it's not just an art movement.
Well, it's a
Modernism is not an
cultural
art
thing.
movement.
Guys.
It's not that either. It's an actual
Like,
philosophical.
ideally, we shouldn't have administrative divisions under a big government. We should just have small governments, like cities.
Well,
You
let
mean,
me throw in something else here, because I don't know how substantiated this is, but say for instance the Icelandic people, Mr. C was telling me the other day that they were able actually to have a form of anarcho-communism or some kind of anarcho-mutualism.
democratic and federalism.
I'm not sure if that's the word
as
for it,
Benjamin
but something
Tucker
like that
said,
sort of.
a small government is a big mean.
I think that
It's a
if
big
we're going
one.
so far as answering the question, we've all answered the first part in the affirmative.
Yeah. And what would you say about the amount of control needs to be exerted over them? And I would like to throw in something to consider. So it seems to me also that depending upon the ethnic makeup of the people in a geographic area, it seems to me that there's a low amount of governing that needs to take place. If
that's true.
If they're ethnically homogenous, it seems to me that there's always been lower crime, greater cooperation, and a high trust society. So what would you say for something like that?
It's not as much ethnic as cultural, though I could very much see the argument that ethnicity, race, culture, religion all flow into each other. I think that is valid. But for example, we can look at America back in, say, the 60s or 70s, and even though it was still it was majority white, but it was still fairly diverse.
Can we say European so we're not racist?
Sure, it was still majority European, but it was still fairly diverse, and yet people got along a lot better. And I think that that's because, well, for one, there were a lot of wars in that time period all in a row, and they sort of contributed towards this very patriotic culture. But I don't know. I don't think it's so much related to race per se, as much as just ideals and culture. But I do think that race can play a role in that.
I think you could say it's much easier.
Society was everybody got along when America was more white. What do you mean by that?
That's not what that's not what I'm saying at all.
I'm sorry. I kind of zoned out for a second.
No, I don't think it had much to do with them being more white. I think it had much more to do with the culture of post-war America in general, whether that's World War I, II, or Vietnam.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Let's just put words in my mouth.
Bravo. No race.
No, yeah, I know. That's pure. I was just being purely facetious. Nothing was meant by that. Okay. So, me throwing my wild card into the mix, what would you guys say about the amount of control that needs to be exerted over your population? What would you say are the factors that would disseminate that a low amount of control or a higher amount of control, or the subtleties
Well, as
of
a
it?
member of the glorious Walmart Burger King empire, I think the main problem is that the country is so enormous and diverse and so unorganized in a way that central power needs to be very, very strong to keep people going with what the elites or the rulers want them to do, that it's just not even worth having that guidance in the first place.
Okay, other thoughts?
Ideally, I think we should have a federation of decentralized communes.
Yeah, democratic confederalism is good.
I think ideally we should just break apart. Each state is an individual, ruling.
I like that idea, but on a community level, even
Mhm.
smaller.
Yeah, we can go smaller than that. Come on.
Okay.
Even smaller than that, individual
The
level.
individual, yeah.
This is anarcho-monarchism.
Yeah.
Individual.
Everyone is the king of themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we've exhausted that question. Let's go to 6. Which definition of the purpose of life do you think brings the most satisfaction to man?
To drive your enemies before you.
Hear the
Okay, so
lamentations of their women.
To slaughter your enemies.
See them driven before you.
Now, is this question structured to man on purpose?
Well,
Should it be taken as mankind?
I think
Well,
it's mankind.
I'll let you guys decide that. We'll make
I
it.
think
We'll make
it's
the question more
mankind.
interesting.
Because like if you're including women, then approach their reason for life is to serve men, and that's it.
I will never understand the inner workings of the femoid brain.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
why are you using that feminist
Okay,
term, Spook? They're called
let's
vaginas.
let's just say
The
since we're all men
menstruators.
here, let's just all say to man to the
The menstruatoids.
yeah. Let's just
The menstruoids. Oh
Yeah,
no.
why are they called menstruators and not womenstruators, huh?
God,
let's just
you're
leave
right.
the weaker sex out of this because we know how sensitive they are. So we're just gonna talk about men in this question.
Aristotle.
There goes the monetization.
But honestly, can you think of a counter argument?
To the femoid question.
No. So the question is, which definition of the purpose of life do you think brings the most satisfaction to man? I think the answer is to crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of
It's
their
not
women.
bad, right? It's I don't know.
Does it not adequately answer what is best in life?
It kind of does.
It does answer.
Okay, so like meme answer is my existence is to serve the blood god. Serious answer is that, the ego, we should serve our own interests, and our own interests are subjective. And it's our own interests we create that gives meaning to, man. And so you can't really say man, but rather you should say the most satisfaction to the individual.
So
Where it's
basically,
a-
what you're saying is objectivism.
No. So
So-
if your goal is to serve the blood god, why don't you just offer him your blood right now?
Because I don't feel like it. I don't want to hurt myself.
Then you are poorly serving him.
I don't care. I don't
Well, I mean,
want.
you could always
know,
steal some tampons.
my goal is to.
The
Okay,
blood
so
god is not a feminist.
I'm a
Yeah.
bit low on blood right now, brother.
So here's my goal. So I want to poorly serve the blood.
There you go. But
He has one.
I
Permission
do
to
think
move
that,
Brothel Howe to the retard room?
Well,
Okay.
let's see by question
Where-
7 if he doesn't sober up, maybe. But I would say for me personally, in my own experiences, I would say that the purpose of life that I have set for myself would just be simply to achieve my objectives. And basically to live for that moment when I know that I've achieved something of note worth. You would say.
What are your
The
objectives? then?
ego is something
Well,
that is
That'd
beyond
be a bit
human
personal.
understanding, and we should
I
only
live to
serve.
3D print
interests
assault
of the-
rifles.
Well,
I'm just gonna throw this out here. If you can envision yourself living past 25, you're a liberal.
Honestly, though, if you think past like the next 10 minutes, I don't. That's some nerd shit, dude. I don't do that.
Okay, so we're gonna go on to question 7. If you had a condition that made life incredibly uncomfortable, would you put more value in acclimating to it or terminating your life?
Well, I actually do, and I'd try to acclimate to it.
Okay, so let's say, for instance, the disease was something that attacked your mind to the point where you were almost. It was. Let's just say it made it harder to think. It impeded your reasoning skills. What would you do then?
Well, let's say so a Cartesian demon screwed up all my senses, right?
Yeah, let's
And
say
it
that.
made it hard to
Always
think.
a good thing to assume.
Well, you know what? I don't give a shit. I'm just gonna go about and do what I want. Like, come on. Like, who cares if you can't understand? Maybe it's just all about hedonism. It's all just about.
If anything, being stupid is Chad as fuck.
Not thinking into the future means that you get mad, push, crushing potential.
Yeah.
But
I
what
mean,
about
the
when it's,
cavemen got by just going and clubbing women over the head and dragging them back to their caves. Like, you don't need a
Yeah,
whole
but
lot
back
of
then
freaking
they didn't
power
have.
for that.
Yeah, but back then they didn't have child support and alimony. So,
Yeah, they were even better off.
well, men were better off. Women had it pretty tough.
Yeah, but femoids,
really-
come on, who cares about them, brothers? Am I right?
Hey,
Gamers
excuse
rise
me,
up.
sir. This is a
Gamers are the
a
most
Christian
oppressed
server
minority.
not so long ago. we can't have you disrespecting women like that.
I'm sorry, I will not disrespect women.
It's right because God said you can't do that.
I think God is a gamer. I think he would understand the femoid question.
Yeah, wait! I'm gonna play that video. What's the?
What video? Well, we can do it afterwards. Oh, okay.
She's a thought.
This is epic, gamers.
I have the
that's
bad
a representation of the server.
Okay, well, let's go to 8, and then we can wrap debate 9 up, and then you guys can go all to your hooligan.
16 and 14.
That's
I agree.
powerful.
Actually,
What an insightful. Hey, imagine some retard like me. Somebody just walks in and says some bullshit experiences shit, and Spook is just moved and he says, "That's power."
Dude, that's powerful as fuck, dude.
Okay, let's go to 8.
Red pill.
When would you say is the proper age for men to be married for women?
16 and 14.
I think
Agreed.
that people should be allowed to marry people of their own age
Oh, you
group.
know, I really did not
Yoga, I
expect
think
that
that's a
to
bit
be an
high.
actual answer to this question, so I kind of ignored it. But,
Actually, wait, no. I don't say 16 for men. I say 23 for men and 14 for women.
you know,
Why? Because
I
you're
would-
23.
No, like I'm
Probably
not even
say-
joking. Like I have an actual reason for that.
Oh,
weren't the
boy.
Greeks? But weren't the Greeks didn't the Greeks wait until the women were 18 for them to get married?
But that's too late. They're spoiled goods by that point.
12 too old.
Well, in our society, yeah.
Because like you also have to think about it. In modern society, women that are 14 are statistically non-virgins.
I
Yeah?
thought it was 15. Wow,
Even
that
better.
soon? That's
I don't know numbers,
Yeah.
'cause I'm only 9.
Well,
Agreed, me too.
I mean, for the sake of this video, I'd probably say we need to keep it 18 plus.
Think about this, right? Gypsies. They get
Whoa,
betrothed.
wait. Bravo.
Whoa, okay. Firstly, don't say gypsy. Say stupid.
Excuse me, they're Roma.
Bravos. Did you think that when I said 14, I was implying underage consent or consummation of marriage? That's
No, I
Wow,
don't think
that is
No, he's
very
talking about
thin-waitist.
betrothal.
betrothal. Not really.
Betrothal.
But for the sake of you, I am.
For the sake of YouTube, I'm
Well,
God damn it.
The thing is from what I
But also,
have
here's the
researched,
thing: 14 is legal in many states of the U.S.
yeah, but from what I've
16
researched
is actually the
um,
lowest age of consent in any state in
16
the US.
plus is the best
That's a lot.
because you can get into birth complications.
No, I'm
if
not
you,
saying that 14 is ideal to have children.
No,
I'm
but
just saying for
I was gonna
marriage
say I think that people should just like as
and
long
for
as they're
development of
within
mind.
as long as they're within 2 or 3 years of each other, they should be able to get married whenever the fuck they want. I don't care. Even if one's
Wow.
5 and one's 6,
So,
they
like,
can marry each other as long as there's no pedophilia involved.
yeah, that's
okay.
pretty edgy.
Well,
Well,
No,
I
it's
would
not,
say
as long as there's no
honestly,
pedophilia involved.
for the
argue
purposes
that
of
a
this
kindergartner
society, I'd
having a crush on a
probably
kindergartner is pedophilia.
well, I would probably say for the purposes of this society that we live in now, or like at least for my ideal society, men should probably look at getting married around the age of 28, and women should probably get married as soon as they can find a man of good earning potential and would make a good father for their children. So I'm not
Okay.
opposed maybe to 16 because that's been accepted in the past. And I think
16 is the age of consent where I live.
well, I mean, if they can find somebody who's a good provider, I don't
Labs.
actually have a problem with that. But I mean, I would be concerned if my own daughter was 16 and she was looking at a almost 30-year-old man. I really would. But if a girl can really find someone who's a good provider and will take care of her and her children, I mean, why not? But for girls, ideally, I would probably say 18 and 18 plus. That's what I would say. Because men are not matured enough for marriage by the time they're in their 20s. I really don't think so. And if you are mature
Yeah.
by that time, it's an exception.
No, I'm 20 and
I
I'm like
agree.
mentally 9. So I feel you.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm like as old as Bravos, and I'm like mentally Bravos.
You guys are just the same person. I knew it.
I actually
sound so
think I was
similar.
ready for marriage because I was gonna get. Well, I was thinking about it.
But
we all know
You
who's
dumped her
there.
for her race.
I know.
As a gypsy, I was
Jesus.
betrothed since birth.
Wait, you're gonna marry the mulatto chick.
Oh gosh, yeah. Let's not go into the details of that. I
Yeah,
think
you guys
most
remember
young
that
Bravos
time
is
that Bravos ruined his own relationship because of her race?
Well,
Yeah, that's the biggest meme
well,
about
let's.
Bravos was a black chick. He was black, and also Bravos is like, and you know that meme where it's like keeping the race pure, and then it's just a bullet, and it says Asian girl. It's like that, but for Bravos, it's
It's like mulatto chicks. Yeah, exactly. Oh wow, I'm gonna have to cut a lot out of this video, or heck, I
You
might
just
just
gotta
upload it.
embrace. Listen, Bravos, embrace conquistador mindset. Okay.
I mean, okay, so
They
Bravos.
didn't even stay for their children. What are you talking
I
about?
think YouTube's fine. That seems
Exactly.
Like
Oh,
far,
wow.
far more controversial.
You know, I
shit
actually
on
have conquistador blood flowing through my.
You got him,
my
dude. You
veins.
have you have the
Actually,
blood
I'm
magic,
Viking and
the
conquistador.
brain magic.
I'm like the book, A Song of Ice and Fire. I have both ice and fire in my veins. Norwegian
Yeah,
and
you
Iberian.
you gotta give them that fire, dude. Embrace
Yeah.
conquistador
And Blood of the
mindset,
Dragon,
brother.
I have East Asian, like 3%.
Dude,
Yeah,
you're like the ultimate furry. You just
You look 50%.
On that note, we're gonna end debate night here, at least the recording. I mean, of course, I think conversation will go on, but thank you everybody for tuning in and hearing all of my dark secrets from my dredged up from my past. But well, I mean, that was my own fault. But anyways, like and subscribe and all that
say-
plugging. Anybody want to say some last things? And we're gonna.
I was
cut it
gonna
off.
say you sound like my friend who was a Happa.
Yo, I just want to say this.
Mhm.
Bravo said dark secrets.
Okay. Well, thank you all for attending debate night. You guys have a good one.